And that's another pot to me. Perhaps you should give up now, Desig, or you might end up losing this voyage's wages to me as well.
Aboard the cargo ship Coral Wrath, a young crew member threw down his cards in dismay before pocketing what few chips he had left.
No. Fine then. I'll let someone else lose to you now.
You do that. Oh yes, and since I'm sure you have idle hands without a losing pair of cards in them, perhaps you'd like to spend the rest of the afternoon swabbing the deck over by the helm.
What? But I just mopped the deck this morning, sir.
Oh, I'm sure you did, lad. But we wouldn't want to make our captain steer the ship standing on a dirty deck, now would we? Or perhaps you'd prefer we lower you down to scrape the barnacles off the hull? It's been almost a month since we last had you do it, and I'm sure we've picked up quite a mess of them down there in all that time.
Ugh.
It's the rookie's job, they told him. You'll only have to do it once, they told him. He was still the rookie of the crew, and the first to be volunteered to do the less pleasant work. But without new faces showing up, he was likely to remain that way for a while.
No, sir. I'll go do that. I suppose the captain will want the deck swabbed before dinner.
I thought you might. Now, on your way, boy. Perhaps if you're quick, you can be first in line for supper.
Yeah, if you can get excited for pig slop. But I suppose if I was first in line, the slop would at least be warm. Mop the deck. I'll mop something of his. One of these days, I swear.
Sailing the open sea was not turning out to be the kind of adventure Desig's younger self was hoping it would be. Growing up near the docks of his home village, he was bound to dream of living a life on the sea sooner or later. Yet, for whatever unfortunate twist of fate, it just happened that the day he gave up on his last dream of adventure and turned his sights toward the sea, it was also just the time he turned old enough to join a crew. Had his youthful days lasted longer, maybe this misery could have been avoided. But no matter what he wanted now, here he was, signed on to a year's voyage on the deck of the Coral Wrath, swabbing the deck day in and day out and always the last in line for meals. At least at their last stop, the first mate had gotten drunk enough for him to sneak out and explore the town. Desig grinned at the memory. Now there had been a fun day. Their last stop had been a town called Nero. It was a small town just east of the Great Desert near Loch Lac. And while the city, the country, and the people of the town were nothing great to see, the travelers and passers through were what really caught his attention. Hunters! Desig soon discovered that while Nero was not much of a town on its own, its location played a vital role as a carryover stop for traveling hunters around the world in search of the deadliest monsters. Now there was an adventurous lifestyle for you. Journeying through rugged lands, fighting vicious beasts, bringing home wondrous trophies and spoils of war. But the thoughts of such an adventurous life only made Desig sigh in misery as he dumped his now filthy water overboard. The only reason he was aboard the ship right now was because he had failed his hunter's exam. Not enough strength, they'd said. Not enough stamina. Not enough guts, willpower, strategy, reflexes. Not enough anything. He'd never felt as worthless in his life as when he dragged his feet out of the guild hall that day.
Ah, buck up, boy!
Desig remembered turning around and finding no one. Before looking down and seeing the short guildmaster sitting on a stool outside the entrance, grinning up at him. Desig remembered the flare of anger that shot through him.
And why the hell should I? I've imagined joining the guild for years, and they throw me out like leftovers. Not even a better luck next time, just you fail, out with you.
Well, of course! It's implied!
What? I mean, what's implied?
The better luck next time part. Come on, boy. If you truly intend to join the guild, you're going to try again, aren't you?
Well, yes, but I can't reapply for a year and a half.
There you go! Plenty of time to improve yourself. Work out, run some laps, practice with a sword, that kind of thing. Go get some experience out in the real world before throwing your blade in with the Hunters Guild again.
But for that long? That's a lot of time to wait just waiting for another test.
Then go on an adventure! Do a different job for a year or something. Be a traveling merchant, learn a trade, travel the land, travel the seas, do whatever you want, but do it for the sake of improving yourself. And who knows, maybe once a year or so rolls around, Perhaps you'll not want to be a hunter so bad, and find a different job that suits you better.
And so, like certainly so many others before him, he had taken the old crackpot's advice and joined up on the first hint of adventure that came his way. And here he was now, miserably wiping the gunk off of the deck of his ship. At the very least, he didn't get seasick anymore.
First thing I'm gonna do when I become a hunter is punch that old coot in the mouth.
You wouldn't be the first to make that claim, boy.
Gah! Yes, Captain?
Vin was certainly a man who commandeered respect aboard the ship. Standing nearly a head taller than anyone else on the ship, and with a girth that made Desig wonder how he stayed standing on the rough seas, he was easily the largest man on the ship.
Calm down, boy. The only crewman on this ship that feels the need to make sure I'm saluted is the first mate. Now, put your arm down. At ease. Or whatever it is those guild sharks bark to make each other relax.
Desig gladly put his arm down and leaned against the railing.
What do you mean by that, Captain? That I'm not the first to say it?
You aren't the first crew member on this ship who wanted to get off this tub and become a hunter, Desig. That's what I mean. You aren't the first dropout that jumped aboard to improve himself. The last one left about, 3 months before you came aboard. Passed with flying colors, too, I heard. And he was about as shrimpy as you were when he came aboard.
Desig bristled at the shrimpy remark, but the realization of what the captain had said was more shocking.
You mean people have actually gotten better after sailing?
Oh yes, boy. Sea life makes the best hunters. The work makes you strong. The rocking of the boat gives you balance. And the emergencies make you fast on your feet and in your brain. Think about that, boy, before you go knocking the life of a sailor.
Vin continued to chuckle as he turned away from Desig and took a spyglass to study the horizon. He was stunned. After so long aboard, he had never even thought that working on the Coral Wrath would turn out so well for his dream of becoming a hunter. But as he thought about it, he began to realize that the captain may have been right. Thinking back over the last month of work, he had found the work progressively becoming easier. Moving cargo around while in port was less tiring and he could carry more, rarely losing his footing in bad weather or tidal turbulence. Desig suddenly found himself smiling. Perhaps the guildmaster had been onto something. He thought back once again to the ship's stop in Nero, remembering how he'd ventured into a hunter's bar. He remembered listening with rapt attention at every story and tale told by the traveling warriors. So many strange, wondrous, and adventurous things they'd done. And if Desig managed to survive this hellish year at sea, he could very well be a hunter like them as well. Suddenly, a memory sparked in Desig's head. He recalled one of the hunters mentioning something in the bar during his time in town. A strange story unlike anything he had heard before.
Captain, can I ask you something?
Of course.
You go on land every time we dock, right? To gather information about current events and the like?
In order to get the most profitable cargo, we must first stay on top of things happening on land. If we want to have a profitable voyage, we must first be sure to stay ahead of the latest cravings and desires of the people wherever we may sail. Why do you ask?
Because I heard this strange rumor while I was in town and was hoping you knew something about it.
I might have. But what rumor did you hear?
It was something about strange people appearing out of nowhere. What are they called? The Lost?
Captain Vin grimaced for a second, before taking a deep breath to compose himself.
Yes. That oddity. I've heard about it.
Could you tell me what you know? It seems to be a really important issue, but nobody wants to talk about it.
That would be because it is so strange that no one knows how to talk about it. But, from what I've heard, some time ago, maybe half a year or so, strange people just began appearing out of thin air and everywhere. I think the first few began to appear somewhere near the great desert around Laklak. A stream of them just started appearing at the city's gates, claiming to be from some strange world with fantastic technologies. Now, normally, people would just assume it to be some big scam, coaxing the people of the city into something. Though I wouldn't know what. But the trickle of people began to grow. Soon, enough people to fill dozens of villages just began piling through the gates of Loch, wanting help. Mind, nobody knew where they were coming from, and much less what to do with them. But the Council of Loch agreed, upon seeing the dire condition some of these strangers were in, to section off a portion of Loch for these people to use. They got the nickname of the Lost soon afterwards. However, it got really bad after that. None of them knew how they got there at all, but they all were swearing to tales of fire and brimstone raining down from the sky before they were brought here. Horrible swaths of death and decay, and many more nasty stories. And then they just, I don't know, fell asleep or something, and woke up in the desert. As you can imagine, this caused some hellish panic back in Loch. The entire world of these people was destroyed by some unknown force. How would we know if they weren't bringing it along with them? About then, the council commissioned an expedition to be sent into the desert in search of the source of all these people, and hopefully find whatever had driven them out. Well, by the time the whole thing was set to move out, the stream of people from the desert had suddenly trickled to a stop. Only for a swarm of people from the rainforests in the south to arrive at Loch gates, telling the same story with the same ending. This time, however, the Council of Loch did not have the resources to accommodate any new arrivals, and stood at an impasse about what to do with them.
That's terrible.
Oh, it gets worse. A couple of months ago, the winter season in the tundra ended, and hunters were finally able to hunt in the region again. When they got there, however, they found bodies. Hundreds of them. And of the very same type of people that had come from the desert and the jungle. They had all died during the blizzards. The cold had frozen them over, so no one even had any idea of how long they'd been there, buried under the snow.
That's horrible.
As the conversation had gone on, a group of crewmen had managed to sneak around the pair and were intently listening in. After a long moment, Desig found his voice again.
What happened? To the people's homeland, I mean.
Who knows? War? Some natural disaster?
Could it have been a monster of some sort? Maybe it was a Rathalos or something like that.
Huh. You'd think so. But there are two problems with that. One, no monster known will just pick up and carry a civilization from wherever they came from to here. And the second, well...
What?
Apparently, none of these people have ever even seen a monster before. None of them. No jaggies, Aptonoth, hell, not even felines.
But that's impossible! Monsters are everywhere in the world. Where could they have come from?
Who knows? Maybe they're from some uncharted section of the world.
So, what happened?
No one knows, boy. No one. Not even them, apparently.
As Captain Vin looked at Desig, he became quite aware of the crowd the conversation had gathered.
Oi! What are you slackers doing? The story's over! Get back to work, the lot of you!
The crew of the Coral Wrath grumbled at having to go back to their jobs after such a strange story, with the passengers returning to their cabins close behind. Desig continued to lean against the railing as the crowd drifted away.
Is it true? The stories, I mean. What they say.
I don't know, boy. I really don't know.
It's true. All of it.
Desig turned in surprise at the voice, and saw a distinct young woman standing away from the other passengers. If someone told him she had been born with such a scowl, Desig might have believed them. He could not help but feel a bit attracted to her in spite of that.
You're one of them, then? One of the lost?
I am. And as I said, all of it's true. The destruction, the chaos, and now here we are, somewhere completely different from what we knew.
When you boarded, you told me you were training to be a hunter. saying that you were hoping to gain an apprenticeship in the town along my path, so you could pass the exam.
Your point.
No offense, miss, but if there truly were no monsters where you came from, why would you seek to hunt them?
I have my reasons, and you don't need to know them.
Ugh. Fine then. Where were you getting off again?
Boma Village. That's where I was told a good hunting teacher lived.
Well then, lassie, you'd best get ready.
Vin said, pointing to the horizon.
We'll be arriving there by evening.
The Sig turned to follow Captain Vin's gesture. Sure enough, on the horizon, the outline of the coast was beginning to materialize, as though slowly rising up from the ocean. With a nod of acceptance, the young woman left the helm and went below deck to prepare for departure.
What an odd woman. I can see why people say the lost are strange.
Indeed they are, boy. Indeed they are.
Wait a minute. I could have requested to become a hunter's apprentice instead of joining a ship's crew?
Eleanor was in a bad mood now. She had been fine for the majority of the trip, but only because she was able to keep her distance from everyone else. She'd taken a chance by leaving the sleeping quarters to go above deck and look at the sea, hoping the view would calm down her restlessness. Just her luck that the captain began telling people about the lost and their circumstances. Those weren't thoughts she wanted in her head. Much less now when they were so close to shore. As the ship got closer to land, Eleanor carried her things above deck, keeping her distance from the other passengers as the ship approached land. Slowly, the rise of hills in the distance grew larger on the horizon, and as afternoon passed, a small village appeared at the base on one of the largest hills. Eventually, Eleanor was able to make out the features of the village. A medium-sized dock for trading and cargo ships jutted out from a small outcropping of land along the beach, and a bright ring of torches circled its center. Eleanor guessed that to be the town center and market. Small notches had been etched onto the hill itself, stretching from the far end of the village. No doubt a relatively safe place to grow crops and other necessities.
It's such a small place. Is there really a hunter who can train me here?
Quickly weaving through the lines of passengers, Eleanor followed the small signs painted to the walls and made her way across the docks towards what was labeled as the marketplace. A recommendation had said she would find the local guild representative, and hopefully, she would be able to find the man who was supposed to be training her as well. After a few minutes of walking and a couple of wrong turns, she finally emerged into an open circle of houses and huts. Many of them had large open awnings, welcome and discount signs to attract customers inside, whether it was for food or hunting equipment. Eleanor took a long look around, trying to memorize the shops and stalls for later use. Finally, her eyes spotted a small booth that had a guild banner hanging proudly over the counter. An enthusiastic young woman stood behind it, chatting happily with a white-haired old man carrying a child Eleanor assumed to be his grandchild. Eleanor glanced around the shops surrounding the guild representative, hoping to spot the man who would train her. Her eyes lingered on a blacksmith shop next door, the stall window displaying a large sword, as well as a spear and broad shield.
First stop for tomorrow for sure.
Oh, hello. Can I help you with anything?
Yes, please. I've received permission from the Hunters Guild to come here and request apprenticeship with a hunter in town. Someone named Marshall. Can you tell me where I can find him?
Oh, he's not far.
He's not. Could you tell me where he is?
I'll do you one better. I'll take you to him. Don't worry, Miss Melanie. I'll take care of this.
As the guild rep nodded slowly, Eleanor picked up her bags.
Thank you for your help, sir.
Of course. Do you need help carrying your things?
No. I mean, you're already carrying your grandson, I think. I wouldn't want to make you work harder.
The old man nodded in understanding, and with a strong gait that Eleanor found surprising for a man his age, began walking towards the hilly area of town. Eleanor had to run a bit to catch up, but managed to catch the man's strides quickly enough.
So you're aiming to become a hunter, are you?
He hoisted his grandson up and slowly and began rocking him in an attempt to lull the child to sleep.
Yes, I am. A guild counselor, Janin, suggested I find a hunter who'd be willing to train me before I took my hunter's exam. He suggested this place and told me that a hunter here, Marshall, would probably be willing to take me on as an apprentice.
Did he now? But this place is quite a ways from the nearest guild examination area. Was there nowhere closer?
I'm not sure, but Janin seemed to be very enthusiastic about Boma Village. He assured me that coming here was my best bet.
The old man glanced down to his grandson to find the infant sleeping contentedly.
Is that all?
Eleanor resisted the urge to shudder. She felt like he was looking straight through her, like he already knew everything and it was futile to resist his questions.
They may have been trying to get rid of me now that I think back on it. I may have been too aggressive in my attempts to join.
The old man stared at her for a moment longer, before smiling. Eleanor relaxed immediately, feeling as though a tremendous pressure had been taken off her.
I see. Guild folks tend to be quite unkind in situations like that. Just send trainees far away and hope they don't return. Seems to be their kind of philosophy.
Damn them!
Eleanor found herself staring at the ground in disappointment. Had it all been a sham? Could she have just been sent on a wild goose chase, simply so the guild could be rid of her?
But you won't give up that easily, will you?
Eleanor looked up to find the old man smiling at her again.
If you're really so determined to enter the guild, I imagine you'll just go right back there when you're ready and show them what you're made of, won't you?
Yeah, of course I will.
I thought as much. So, why do you want to become a hunter?
I have my reasons.
I see.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, what do you want from hunting? Fame? Glory? Riches?
I just want to kill monsters.
The two of them slowly stopped walking and stood eye to eye without speaking. Eleanor glared back at the old man's face in defiance to his cold, judgmental look. The silence was broken by the old man's grandson, who woke up from his nap and began to babble in his unintelligible infant language. The old man held Eleanor's glare for a moment longer, before turning away to pay attention to his grandson.
We're almost there.
The two began walking again, and soon came to a grouping of small huts at the base of the hills that held the fields. Looking around, Eleanor realized that the small houses all resided next to a small inlet that came in from the ocean. From the looks of it as they walked down the path, it was mostly only used for fishing, not deep enough to act as a docking bay for larger ships.
Most of the hunters live on this side of the town. The guild's sanctioned boats that carry hunters to different areas of the world are small enough to get into the inlet. So we have them pull into this bay so the cargo and transport ships aren't hindered over at the main docks. We keep the hunter dwellings on this side of town so they can get their goods from their homes before paddling out to the boats.
Why is the guild rep in the town center then?
So hunters either visiting or passing through can find it easier. Sometimes hunters that live out on the islands off the coast will pass through Boma on their way to Lochlac. We keep the guild rep close to the center so they don't waste their time having to look. We're here.
Should we be entering without asking?
The owner won't mind. Now, where is he?
The man laid his sleeping grandchild on the bed and took a long look around before his eyes rested on the deck's opening.
There you are.
Eleanor followed his gaze to the deck, trying to determine what the man was looking at as he slowly crept over to the opening in the wall. He knelt quietly and picked up the fishing pole at his feet, holding it from the opposite end, and looked up at the awning. Looking up, Eleanor realized something was odd. There was a large bulge in the middle of the awning that rocked slightly in the breeze. With a quick flick of the pole, the man hooked and pulled whatever laid in the awning. With a yelp, a large object dropped down, bounced off the deck, and rolled into the water with a large splash. Eleanor hurried over to the opening in the wall just as a shirtless young man surfaced from the cold water, sputtering and spitting ocean water.
Damn it, old man, you could have been gentler about it!
And I suppose you want me to be more forgiving as well when you try and hide all day in case a hunter mission pops up and needs to be dealt with? Need I remind you what your job in the village is, boy?
You could have poked me in the back and been done with it, you know. But you just had to go all the way and throw me into the ocean. It's not as if work you've given me has been worthwhile. Find some cabby horns, mine some oars, pick some damn weeds. That's all I get out of you.
Ah, shut up, boy. You should be more grateful that this town supports your lazy ass. I win again, boy.
I'll get you one of these days, old-timer. That poker face won't hold forever.
Ha! By the time I'll be dead, then I'll like to see you get a grin out of me.
I'm not above digging up a grave to beat you, old man.
Probably not, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I have someone I'd like to introduce to you.
Oh, right.
The young man got out from the water and approached Eleanor.
Who's this lovely lady?
Your new apprentice.
Hold on! What the hell do you mean an apprentice?
Just as I said, you'll be taking her on as an apprentice, so she can pass the hunter's exam, of course.
Wait a minute. You mean this guy is the marshal who's supposed to train me?
Wait, what the hell are you talking about? My name is Levin. I'm not even an official hunter myself. This old bastard is marshal. And what do you mean by this guy?
Wait, you're marshal? But you're...
Too old? I believe Levin here said the same thing when he began as well. You shouldn't judge the value of a hunter by their age, young lady.
So, you're the one who's going to teach me how to hunt.
I'm not so old that I can't hold my own against a monster or two, if that's what you're asking.
Besides nothing, old man. What do you mean I'm going to teach her how to be a hunter? I'm not a qualified hunter myself yet, and the guild sent her to you anyway.
And I passed her on to you.
Wait, hold on. Why would you have him teach me? You said yourself he was your apprentice. Why make me his?
Because it will be better that way, I think.
How the hell did you figure that out?
Will you be quiet and let me explain?
Now, as I've said, I've decided to make Miss Eleanor here your apprentice instead of mine, Levin. Now I realize you're not a fully trained hunter, but listen to my reasons. I've realized over my many years of training the occasional rookie that when teaching, the teacher is likely to learn as much as the student. Now, Levin, I've felt over the last couple of weeks that I haven't been able to teach you quite as much new information as I was able to give at the start of your apprenticeship. I'm sure you felt the same.
Yeah, a little. But I thought you were just waiting for something new to pop up on the hunter's board.
Oh, most monsters follow a lot of the same rules with a few minor alterations. But when teaching someone else, you'll have to learn a lot more. Especially you, since, well, you've never worked with a team on anything. As a teacher, you must gain the ability to read your apprentice's actions and know when and how to assist them. This will help a lot as you develop into an official hunter, at which point you'll need to work together with others to hunt the truly dangerous monsters. You'll also find that you'll fine-tune your own abilities over the course of teaching her. Since you'll have to work properly explaining how to hunt efficiently, you'll find flaws in your own methods. Don't worry though, I'll keep my eyes on you, since I am still your teacher, but the bulk of what you'll be learning will be up to you.
But even so, wouldn't it be better for you to teach me since you've been at it for so much longer?
Perhaps, but there are other issues besides the whole teacher-apprentice mutual learning idea. My other issue comes from your similar circumstances.
What circumstances?
You're both part of the Lost, aren't you?
You're one of the Lost?
Yeah, I am. We weren't called the Lost back when I applied for an apprenticeship with Marshall, though. There weren't enough of us for the Locklock Council to take us seriously at the time.
But there was some of you that were considered enough of an annoyance to do something about, though. And because of your similar circumstances, you both have certain characteristics that will make it easier for the two of you to understand each other.
Like what?
Stubbornness, for one. Far too determined to fulfill your desire to know when you've gone too far.
Got me on that one.
Not to mention other problems that the Lost seem to have with the world. I still remember the problems I had teaching you, Levin.
I guess I was a bit of a problem child, huh?
I'm just saying, you'll have an easier time teaching than I will. You come from the same culture, have had the same problem, and at least the same big problems. And you both have a strong desire to be a hunter. Or at least that's my opinion on the matter. It's up to you whether or not you'll trust my decision, I suppose.
Levin sighed again and looked over at Eleanor. He seemed to look at her with more searching eyes, trying to get a better grasp on her. Eleanor glared back. She didn't like the thought of the two of them juggling her apprenticeship around like it was something simple. She couldn't risk her hunter exam on something as stupid as this. She had to become a hunter. Had to!
Do you really think I'll do better?
I do.
Then I'll trust you about this. Your intuition has been right almost every time you've made a point of it.
Wait, you're going along with this?
I trust him.
And I think what you need to ask yourself, Miss Eleanor, considering you came all this way to train, is, will you trust me as well?
Eleanor was silent for a long moment. She didn't like the thought of having to train directly under someone who wasn't fully trained themselves. But after coming so far for the sake of becoming a hunter, was she really willing to give up just because of some wild whims of the teacher?
I'll do it. I don't like it, but I'll do it.
Good to hear. Though, I'm sure you don't see it yet. I'm sure you'll find this was a good decision.
The old man continued to laugh to himself as he walked to the bed and picked up his still sleeping grandson.
Now, Levin, I'm sure since you'll be training her, you're perfectly willing to take her into town tomorrow and buy her some decent gear for her first hunt.
But you're the one who arranged all this, old man! Surely you have some spare cash from your hunter days.
Good lord, he's a cheapskate and a mooch. Fantastic.
Oh, I do. But I imagine it will be going to spoil little Theo here. Besides, you have some extra money from that great Jaggy you captured without my knowing, right?
Nothing gets past you, huh?
No, sir. I imagine Miss Eleanor here hasn't had too much practice with the wide range of weapons.
No.
Didn't think so. Take her to see Melanie tomorrow. The guild always keeps a few spares for prospecting hunters. Give her some practice with whatever's available. We'll see what she's best with. Oh yes, and I think Miss Eleanor here will be taking the unoccupied house next to yours. More convenient that way, I think. I'll fill out the paperwork tomorrow while you two are getting geared. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get this little one off to bed.
Are you sure this is a good idea?
Not at all. But like I said, I trust Marshall. He saved my ass far too many times for me to doubt his instincts.
But I don't know him like you do, so how am I able to trust him?
Because he knows how to read people. I'm sure you've seen it. His judging stare.
I suppose. But I guess the better question is, how do I know I can trust you?
You can't yet. And I don't expect you to without getting to know me. But since I've decided to do the whole training you thing, I'm gonna do my damn best to make you the best hunter that I can, while trying to keep you alive and safe. So, we'll have plenty of time to gain each other's trust, I think.
Eleanor was dumbfounded. How could he be so carefree after everything that had happened to the Lost? What made him so content with sudden change in lifestyle? She somewhat envied his ability to recover from the past, but she couldn't allow herself to get soft. Everything she'd gone through, and what she decided to do with her life, she couldn't afford to become so simple.
But for now, let's get you moved in.
You don't.
But I am anyway. Oh, and by the way, nice to meet you, Ellie.
My name's Eleanor.
Sure it is. I'm going to call you Ellie.
No, you're not.
I'd like you to try and stop me, Ellie.
Ugh.
This was going to be a rough apprenticeship.